In this video, we're going to identify angles formed by transversals. This video is vocabulary heavy and angle heavy, but it's one of the most important foundational information that you need to know in geometry. So make sure that you can master these concepts really, really solidly. Otherwise, it won't take too long for you to get really lost in geometry. Okay, so copy down these vocabulary and then we're going to come back and talk about it. Transversal is one of the most important lines that you're going to need in geometry. What it is that if I already have two lines, A and B, and they're coplanar, they don't have to parallel. They can go something like this. So this can be A and this can be my B. And transversal is this red line here. I'm going to call it T. That is the only line, is the line that cuts through another two lines that are coplanar. So that's my transversal. Okay, so again, a transversal is a line that cuts through two other lines on the same plane. Now, in the case that I hand drew just here, A and B, if I do, I can do a transversal like this, T, like that. So obviously, when the T cuts into A and B, T is my transversal. But notice in that example, lines can be extended, right? If I extend my A and extend my B, do you notice that A in this case is cutting through B and T, so A can be a transversal too. And B can be cutting, is intersecting with A and T as well. So B can be a transversal as well. So all it says in the definition of transversal is that it's a line that cuts through two other lines, or a line that intersects with two other lines on the same plane. Most often, you will see this scenario with A and B looking somewhat parallel. That makes life a lot easier for us in geometry. So that's transversal. Also, once you have transversal, I'll do it nicely with my keyboard rather than my handwriting. So you notice that you are creating how many angles here? Let's see. If I put angle 2 there, and then I can have angle 3 here, move closer, and I can have angle 4 there. And at the bottom, let's see if I can have angle 5 in the corner, angle 6. Please make sure you mark this in your notebook as well. And angle 7 and angle 8. Let's see. So again, I have a transversal T cutting through line A and line B, and then at the intersection, there creates 8 angles in total, right? So now out of this 8 angle, there creates some relationships here. Corresponding angle says that, first of all, let me go back to this transversal. You notice that there is something called alternate interior and alternate exterior angles. So when we have two lines like this and a transversal cutting it through, the space between the two lines are called interior. And the space outside the two lines here, those are called exterior. And also when we talk about alternating, we're alternating around the transversal. That only happens with the transversal. So what it means is, okay, so let me erase this so that my graph can look cleaner. If I look at angle 3 and angle 8, for example. Notice that they're both in the exterior, right, of this graph. So so they are also not on the same side of the transverse. So they're on the alternating side. So I'm talking about angle 3 and angle 8. They are on the alternating side of the transversal, and they are also both on the exterior. And same thing with angle 2 and angle 7. They are also alternating exterior angles. Now let's look at angle 1 and angle 6. Angle 1 and angle 6. First of all, they're in the interior, right? Secondly, they're on different sides of the transverse, so they are alternating interior angles. And same thing with angle 4 and angle 5. They're alternating interior. So the alternating is referring to the transversal, and the exterior refers to the areas above and below the two lines. What else I haven't covered? So that's all about the alternating interior and exterior angle. There is another really useful pair of angles called corresponding angles. Corresponding in English just means one-to-one, right? When I correspond, I write to one person writes back to me, or I write to one group writes back to me. So there's a one-to-one relationship, and usually it means you're in a very similar situation. So let's look at angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 2 and angle 6 are not alternating. They're on the both sides, right, of the both sides of the transversal. So that excludes alternate interior and alternate interior angles. They also are both above their respective lines. 2 is above A, 6 is above B. So in this case, we call them corresponding. Angle 4 and 8, they're on the same side, so they're not alternating, and they're both below their respective lines, so they're corresponding angles as well. Same thing can be said about angle 3 and angle 5, and angle 1 and angle 7. Those are 4 pairs of corresponding angles. And then finally, there is this concept called consecutive. I don't like this angle. Consecutive interior angles. It's also known, I like this term slightly better, same side interior. So now you know where to look for. You look for the interior, so it can be only be referring to 4 angles, 1, 4, 5, 6. And they have to be on the same side. Therefore, 4 and 6 is a pair. They're both same side interior or consecutive interior angles. And angle 1 and angle 5 is a pair. That's a 5. And that's same side interior angles. Okay, so there are 4 groups of angles. There is, this one is the troublemaker, the orange one, same side interior angles. The easier ones to remember are the alternate exterior angles and the alternate interior angles. And then you also have corresponding angles. So 4 groups and 4 groups of angles. Now let's see how we identify them. Here it says identify relationship between angles, angle 1 and 2. They are on the alternating side of the transverse. So here's my transverse. So I can call this line A, line B. Therefore, 1 and 2 are alternating, right? And they're also on the inside. So they are alternating interior angles. 3 and 4, they're on different sides of the transversal in this case, right? Look at the angles are tightly connected with the transversal. So in this case, my 3 and 4 are alternating exterior because they're on the exterior side angles. My 5 and 6, in this case, my transversal is here. Here's my A and here's my B. Notice that in question B and question C, it's very clear. It's less clear in A, but in B and C, it's very clear that A and B are not parallel. So there are opportunities where A and B are transversals as well. However, because of the angles they specified, angles 5 and 6, if we use A and B as a transversal, we will find that there's no relationship. Only when T is the transversal, they are on the same side interior angles or consecutive interior. Consecutive is just continuous. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's continuous, that's consecutive, right? Let's look at this one. We have to identify all pairs. For corresponding, first of all, we have to identify which is our transversal. In this case, our transversal is T here. I'll call this line A, this line B. Do not hesitate to spin the diagram around. Whichever direction make it look easier. For me, it's easier to look at the transversal and the angles when the transversal appears somewhat vertical. So corresponding angles, I would have angle 9 is corresponding to angle 13. Angle 10 is corresponding to 14. Angle 11 is corresponding to 15. And angle 12 is corresponding angle with 16. That's the answer for A. For B, alternate exterior, let's see. So I'm only looking at exterior angles, which is 9, 11, 14, and 16. If I look at 9, my alternating is number 16. If I look at 11, my alternating side is 14. Those are two pairs. And alternating interior, I have 4 angles, 10, 12, 13, 11. So 10 and 15 is a pair. They're alternating interior. And 12 and 13 are also alternating interior. Okay, notice that there's a tendency, people are saying, well, 10 and 11 are also alternating. Yes, they are. They're also interior. But why are they now called alternate interior? They're another special pair, right? They are linear pair. They form 180 degrees, but they are not called alternating interior because both of them are affiliated with line A and the transversal T. When we talk about each of these pairs, they all form a relationship with line transversal with 2 separate lines. So that's the reason that we're not looking at 10 and 12 and 13 and 15 because of that. So last question, D, same side interior. Interior is again 10, 12, 13, and 15. The transversal is T, so same side would be 10 and 13, and 12 and 15. Okay? Here's some follow-up practices. Give it a try. We're going to do a lot of practice with this unit because this is really important. From this point forward, they are all practices. We're also going to do a lot more online practices as well. You really have to master all of these angles before we can proceed any further and feel comfortable. A lot of the students who have a hard time in geometry is because they fall behind in this section, and then the rest of it will just becoming harder and harder. But if you get this one right, the next several chapters will become a lot easier. Okay, thank you guys. Bye-bye now.